I heard somebody the other day said two teams in a one-team market, and I thought I don't know that LA is a one-team market. I mean, I don't know that sharing a stadium is a good idea, but I think they put a stadium on the south side and a stadium on the north side. You got 11 million people you're including there. So the Rams, the biggest, is it the biggest or the second biggest fall off from a Super Bowl champion?
I believe they had the most losses for any Super Bowl champion
Okay.
ever. Yeah.
Okay. So the good news for Rams fans is that McVay is staying. The bad news is that they don't have a first round pick because of the Matt Stafford deal, which is still kind of good news because Stafford is confirmed. He's also coming back after speculation he may retire from a severe concussion and that spinal cord contusion that he had mid-season. Injuries just absolutely killed the Rams this year. Statistically, we can talk statistics and records. They were way better than they showed. But I also want to point out, they didn't go through anything that San Francisco hasn't gone through the last 2 years, right? Now, and I'm not dogging Sean McVay. I'm as much as I'm kind of propping up Shanahan the 49ers have been still a real threat despite going through those type of injuries. But it was kind of a perfect storm for the Rams. So they, I'm not going to give them any shit. I'm going to give them a mulligan. They were 22nd on defense. Just mediocre across the board statistically. 27th on offense. But, Stafford and Kupp and Donald, the stars were just falling out of the sky. And actually, I see here, they actually tied the Broncos, the 99 Broncos, for the most losses by a defending Super Bowl champion. So, what do you think? Are the Rams going to come back and be the old Rams?
That's a great question. Again, not having draft picks, high draft picks, year after year after year, like it feels like at some point it's going to take its toll. Like, because the salary cap is what it is. Like, you can't just keep paying really good guys to come in. Like, you have a bunch of really good guys on your team and all the most important players on their team, and they were all out for huge chunks this season. So, that'll make a big difference. So I think obviously next year, as long as all the most important players on the team can stay healthy, they'll be a better football team. But there have been a lot of pieces, specifically on the defensive side of the ball. Sure, you still have Jalen Ramsey, there's talk that he could get moved this offseason, so they might not have him going into next year, but you're going to have Aaron Donald at least. But outside of that, they've lost so many good players on that defense over the last 3 seasons, and they haven't been able to draft guys because they trade for guys all the time. So not having those draft picks is hurting them. Spending money elsewhere on guys and big name guys and having all that dead cap that they have is killing them. So they have a lot to figure out. There are ways around it. The Saints cap situation is trash every year, and they figure out a way to work around it. So I have faith that they'll be able to figure out some strategy to get better. But at the point that we're sitting at right now, I still wouldn't expect the Rams to be a Super Bowl contender in 2023.
I wouldn't either. And at the time that I heard that McVay was thinking about walking away, I was like, just walk away and get yourself a one-way ticket to Bali and go hang out with Cliff Kingsbury. This may be a sinking ship for all the reasons that you just pointed out, not because McVay's a bad coach. I mean, the cap and the injuries and the aging, the free agents and the aging players, and there may be a complete rebuild here. And I guess it depends on if McVay knows they're going to. And that a complete rebuild is, I'm exaggerating there, but there may be some lean years to kind of cut some guys off and regain some cap space, and it may be lean. So I don't think they're going to come back and be what they were either. McVay has to know that's coming and factor that into his decision to come back, which was probably the reason he was thinking about leaving anyway, whether he had the energy to put into rebuilding this thing or not. But I think he's a good coach, and I think these lean times, just from my personal coaching experience, these lean times are when you find out how much you really love the game and how much you really love when you're winning. it's one thing. When you're losing, everything changes. So, McVay, next couple of years, he may really grow as a coach. He may decide it's not him, or he may really, become an even better coach at that, and stay at the Rams and they rebuild and be a formidable foe over the years to come.
Yeah, and I can't wait to look more into the Rams this offseason and what their future looks like, because I'll be interested to see, what they look like next offseason and draft picks and free agency and all that, and what their cap will be, because I wonder if they end up 7 wins, 6, 7, 8 wins in 2023, and then you get Aaron Donald, almost certainly no matter what happens after next year, probably going to retire. Matt Stafford, retire. Sean McVay, retire at that point. I feel like he probably would definitely think about, or at least leaving, probably retire and go to the booth. I think, networks are waiting for him to go to the booth. So I think that's, likely to happen if they have a bad season, but he ends up in the playoffs again. That competitive itch is getting scratched, and that'll probably keep them there. Again, depending on what their future looks like and if they'll have draft picks and cap and all that kind of stuff. But again, I don't know about next season them being very good, but can't wait to talk about this team more.
I'd just like to point out, you're really not going to be happy with me. I'm going to do this, but talking about this roller coaster, this constant cap space and free agents. When you win a Super Bowl, everybody wants your players, and this constant revolving door with the cap space and the free agents and the aging players, everything that goes on. It's really incredible what the New England Patriots were able to do over 20 years. Right? I mean, seriously, I'm being dead 100% serious. Because at some point for him and Mike Tomlinson, for that matter, the guy's never had a losing season at Pittsburgh. And the lean years come by default. The more you win, the harder the lean year is going to hit you, because everybody's going to pick your stuff off. So, I was thinking about that while we were talking about McVay, when I was talking about what's it going to be over the next couple of years? How's he going to adjust? Is he going to stay? Just hats off to guys, and Andy Reid for that matter. I mean, Andy Reid has Patrick Mahomes, but Andy Reid's been around a long time, and he's won a lot of football games in this league, a very long time. And he consistently, no matter who he has, every year his teams are competitive. And I love well-coached teams. Part of the game that I love.
Yeah, then I was actually just thinking about that with Andy Reid today. I'd heard somebody say something, and it just popped in my head, like Andy Reid, whether it was Donovan McNabb or Alex Smith, Patrick Mahomes, or even Chad Henne. In the last 2 years, Chad Henne has had to play meaningful time in playoff games and is scoring touchdowns. Like Andy Reid is just, I mean, when you talk about greatest coaches of all time, I know Bill Belichick, everybody will say he's the best because he's got all the Super Bowls and had Tom Brady and whatever. Dude, Andy Reid is 1B. He is right there, in my opinion.
Oh, without a doubt. And the interesting thing from a coaching standpoint, the interesting thing about, from what I understand about Andy Reid and what I understand about Bill Belichick, again, I don't know the guys. I haven't been in their practices, but I've coached for a long time. And they're two different coaches. One is military style. This is the way we're doing things. And this is what we're going to do, and you're either going to do it or you're out. And Andy Reid, I'm sure we all know which one I'm talking about there. Andy Reid they were talking about this last night in the game, and I've heard this about him before, that he's the kind of guy that he likes to let his players play. He likes to let them do what they're good at. He gives them a lot of free range to evolve. And so one's a well-oiled machine, and the other one, I mean, one's like a military science college, and the other one is like a liberal arts school, where they're just laying around half naked painting all day, right? And it's amazing that those two men have accomplished what they've accomplished with such polarized ideology in a league like this. I just find it fascinating.
Yeah, the sustained success is just incredible. Like you talked about, like being able to do it for like every year for that long, no matter who's on the roster. Like that's as I get older and watch more football, like those are the things that stick out to me. Is some of these coaches are just different than the rest.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Which is now you know my and you know we've talked about this a lot, but my critique of Tony Dungy. I think Tony Dungy was a good coach, but he's nowhere near in the category with these other people that we've just mentioned, and including Mike Tomlins. I think Mike Tomlinson's a better coach than Tony Dungy. I really do.